Welcome to another episode of In the Middle. We are back with things to talk about. A lot has happened, a lot has transpired since we have left. And we want to start off this episode getting into the conversation that is happening in Minnesota with ICE. And we're going to let T break this down because weren't you in this area at one point when you were going to school?
I literally lived in Minneapolis for 3 years. Like I've been in Houston. This is my third year, but I moved from Minneapolis to Houston. So this happened literally blocks away from where George Floyd was murdered. And so naturally, that community very much, they ride. I mean, Minneapolis, regardless of if you agree with the type of leftism or progressivism that is dominant there, one thing about it, especially in the wake of the George Floyd moment, they are a very organized city. And so they are people who do cop watches. And so now that ICE is present in the community, I'm not surprised at all that neighbors were doing an ICE watch when this really fucked up situation happened.
Yeah. A couple of blocks away from where George Floyd was murdered, I have heard a lot about the community and the organizing in Minneapolis. And this is also they're trying to repair the community. Like the police, the local government is trying to repair the relationship with the community. And to see this happened like shortly after, and the response from the Trump administration is that, well, she was trying to run the officer over, what have you. Fuck ICE. Like, abolish ICE. This is why we have been saying this for the longest. There is no reforming this.
Yeah.
At all.
There is no repairing community relations either. Like, so in technical terms, what happened, right? Here's the spill. So yesterday in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as a part of the whole like Trump administration is deploying ICE to blue states and blue cities. A few months ago, 2,000 ICE agents were deployed to Minnesota. Minneapolis has a progressive Dem mayor, and there's no such thing as a good mayor, so let's not give him too much at all. And of course, Governor Walz is still the governor who was running for president with Kamala Harris. So very much, again, blue Dem. So blue state, blue governor, blue city. But Renee Good was a 37-year-old mother of three. ICE was allegedly, or according to them, doing an operation in her neighborhood. And as I said before, this is a city that is very organized and very much organized around cop watches, and therefore they have infrastructure in place to do ICE watches because a pig is a pig. So they watch the pigs in Minneapolis. When I moved there in August of 2020, so George Floyd was murdered at the end of May 2020. I moved in late August. And there were no police patrolling in Minneapolis when I got there. Community had said, when we say no pigs, no pigs. They had organized themselves to autonomously watch their streets, watch their communities. And I remember walking around my Dinkytown neighborhood and like seeing posters up that says, we don't call the pigs, we don't call the cops. Here, the list of alternatives, that whatever. And it was wild because I had just come from Atlanta, which was, in turmoil after Rayshard Brooks had happened. We had burned down the Wendy's. It was a whole thing happening in Atlanta. But what didn't happen was us seizing the city and taking the city back from the pigs, even if it was just for a temporary moment. So I said all that to say what happened to her evoked an immediate response, like in the moment response. So there's a lot of videos circulating on the internet. And obviously, I don't condone just anybody, going and watching a video of a police murder, of a state, assassination, of a state killing of a person. So proceed with caution. But if you go on social media, on X, on Instagram, you can see video recording from the incident itself, from the aftermath, from different perspectives. There was one video that I watched where it was a woman literally yelling at the ICE agent. You know, he was like, ma'am, you need to calm down. And she was like, how the fuck can I calm down? You just killed my neighbor. Like, full stop. And the community continued to stay on the scene. There were images of the people in Minneapolis throwing snowballs because it's Minneapolis. It's covered in snow from October until like April. So it's cold out there. It's snowy. The people, you know, threw snowballs at them. ICE hit them back with tear gas. And according to CNN, there have been protests this morning, or all news outlets. I mean, it's pretty much, this is just the standard reporting. But there were protests this morning outside of federal building. The mayor and the governor together have completely condemned what happened. So obviously this is a standoff between Dems and the Republicans over, you know, the bullshit. And so, you know, in the rare times that you actually do get liberals to, you know, fight for their communities in some way, it's not just them too. Ilhan Omar is the congressional representative for this area. So she has been, you know, crusading and on the fight for the community. But this morning, CNN reported that J.D. Vance and the Trump administration's new line, not only, so the immediate line that they were holding is that the woman, so Renee tried to hit the ICE agent with her car. She was in the car. They told her to move or get out of the way or get out of the car or whatever. When they asked her to get out of the car, she didn't. She put the car in drive and they shot her, is the gist of what happened. As I said, you can watch the video and everything, but that's what happened. And now the report is, Renee was a part of a larger left-wing, insurgent faction targeting ICE agents. So this was immediately the response from J.D. Vance and Kristi Noem. And then today on CNN, they are reporting that the officer who fatally shot Renee has been previously hit by a car and received over 30 stitches in his leg. In the past 6 months, he has been hit twice by a motor vehicle. One time, the first time, it led to 30 stitches and very serious leg injuries. This is a guy who's actually done a very, very important job for the U.S. He's been assaulted. He's been attacked. He's been injured because of it. He deserves a debt of gratitude. So that is a quote on CNN from J.D. Vance. The officer apparently had 10 years of experience with ICE and removal operations, according to the Homeland Security Office. The enforcement and removal operations is obviously a branch of ICE that deals specifically with the arrest and deportation of undocumented folks. So when they say they were performing an operation in the community, they were there to take a community member from their homes. These are people who were defending their neighbors, people who were defending their communities, people trained to do cop watches, witnessing a 37-year-old mother of 3 be shot in front of everybody, publicly executed by ICE for putting her car in drive. It is a horrific story. And if in the next few days, nothing's standing in Minneapolis, I feel like that's the only solution at this point. If ICE won't get out, don't give them shit to patrol. Like, light it up, you know? Like, I'm in full solidarity with the community. There is no fixing this. There is no calling the police on police in this moment. Like, ICE is a federal agency. The federal government is saying, well, she was a left-wing insurgent who tried to do it anyway, and this man's been hit by a car and he's a hero. So there's no calling the police on the police. It's really time to escalate on the domestic state terrorism that we are experiencing before we get into conversations about what we're doing globally.
Yes, even with the leadership in this area, you have Governor Walz saying, ICE, get out. Like, they're get out. But Governor Walz has activated, or is, to my knowledge, activating the National Guard. And he's not calling on the National Guard to arrest the pigs. He's calling on them to protect property because they don't want another incident of what happened after George Floyd. So these people are not here to protect, like, these pigs, they're not here to protect us. They're not going to arrest ICE agents. They're not going to do that. I think people believe that that's what's going to happen, as if that's not the mission. And I need people to understand that.
Yeah.
This is genuinely like, so this is the first time I'm hearing about this story. And it's heartbreaking. I that's why I'm kind of just like sitting here sort of like baffled, speechless, because we've heard this story over and over and over and over again, a different name but always the same story. And I think my only real takeaway from this that I haven't said for every other police murder, is if the officer who murdered this woman had trauma from being run over by a car before, why the fuck was he in uniform, and why the fuck was he allowed to be on the streets policing people? If this man had trauma just from 6 months ago from being ran over by a fucking car, he should be sitting in somebody's therapist's chair about the trauma that he has. And instead, he had a trauma response, an alleged trauma response, and shot somebody because of his own trauma, because of his own hurt feelings, because of his own individual pain. And that, like, irrespective of what one might feel about ICE, which obviously for this show, for the three of us, is always fuck ICE. But even if you are not somebody who believes in quote unquote the abolition of ICE or whatever the fuck, it should be it should just be very clear that somebody who is having a trauma response that leads them to murdering somebody else is in the wrong. Like that should just be clear. And I'm really baffled by the fact that, I mean, I'm not baffled. It doesn't surprise me, but it is still baffling for me. Like that the response is because this man has been run over before, that makes him a hero, and not he's been run over before and it's been recent, and therefore he should never have been on the streets.
Yeah. Like if we're pretending there's a such thing as pig reform, if we're pretending that there's a such thing as accountability from the state, from the terrorist state, let's just pretend. That's absolutely right. And I think it's also important to mention here too that this is not an isolated incident, that this is the I think the 9th incident where ICE has shot someone recently, including where they killed a 43-year-old Black man, Keith Porter, in Northridge, Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. He was killed by an off-duty ICE agent for allegedly pointing a gun at the officer. He was an armed man. You know, we live in the United States. We allegedly have the right to bear arms. Loved ones said Porter fired gunshots outside as a part of a New Year's Eve celebration. I don't condone, niggas going outside and shooting to celebrate the New Year, 4th of July or whatever. But we know communities do that. People do that. My mom's neighbors didn't stop shooting fireworks until 4 a.m. And they started right up again the next day. Like, that's how people celebrate holidays. And allegedly the ICE agent said he heard gunshots outside of his apartment that sounded like they were getting closer. The officer took his ICE authorized firearm, left his apartment to investigate, and he killed Mr. Porter.
Is this another trauma? He just feels.
No. This is community policing in action.
Yeah.
Like the favorite concession that they love to give us after they kill somebody, after the pigs off somebody. They love a reform package, and we need to invest more money in community policing. Like, we got all pissed off about Cop City, but like prior to Cop City, they literally built a home for police officers in Vine City, like in the Bluff, like in historically Atlanta's poorest city neighborhood. That is, we all know, a market for heroin use and sex work. And as a part of building Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they built a home for police right in that community, to emphasize community policing, which is a part of the Obama policing reforms that were offered to the BLM moment. So yeah, the fact that you have these agents with weapons authorized to police even when they aren't on duty is a part of this ethos that we need to employ and deploy pigs who are of community, who live in community, to keep community safe. When you have a pig living next door, you can't even take the gun that you are licensed to have and go outside in your community and do what you want to do with it, because they now feel threatened. They feel empowered. They are emboldened by the state to deliver state justice. And state justice in the United States terms is always terrorism. So of course he was killed, and I want us all to stop giving the system the benefit of the doubt. I think we are long overdue. The existence of this country is predicated, obviously, on slavery and indigenous genocide. The fact that the United States exists means that indigenous genocide is ongoing. It's a capitalist state, so that means the poorest are expendable at all times. The military-industrial complex exists. That means this is an imperial order that does the same thing here and abroad. And so there is no such thing as a good agent of the state at any level. I don't give a fuck if it's ICE. I don't care if it's the police. I don't care if it's sheriffs. I don't care if it's governors and mayors and city council people and prosecutors. And there's no such thing as a progressive prosecutor. There is no justice for these people. Even if the agents are relieved of their duties or tried or whatever, like, okay, so what? They put the officer in jail who killed George Floyd. That didn't stop police from killing people. That didn't stop the empire. And so if we take nothing else from this conversation today, both regarding Minneapolis and Venezuela, what's happening at home and abroad, it's just always like, there's no reforming this. There's no calling the pigs on the pigs. Like, everything must go, if we want a shot at something like a dignified, quality of life.
I mean, George Zimmerman is the proof that you can get away with this type of murder. We already knew that.
Yeah.
That man is still walking around alive and free,
unfortunately,
right now. So, like, he is the proof.
Who was the white boy from Kenosha, Wisconsin, who did the same thing, who took his guns down to the protests?
Oh yeah,
and shot people.
Welcomed in the White House,
mm-hmm.
the people's house.
Yeah, the right wing raised thousands of dollars to support him legally.
He just got married or something like that.
Yeah, he's a hero.
Yeah, Mar-a-Lago, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, thank you, T, for that. And yeah, it's a lot for me to process. I did see it when it was happening on social media. And yesterday was supposed to be a relaxing day for me. And it's never a relaxing day in the US for us. So speaking of the US and our involvement in all the things, we are in the middle of Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
And where do we even start? So So on January 3rd, 2026, U.S. Special Forces under the Trump administration captured Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, in Caracas, Venezuela. The United States is accusing Maduro of narcoterrorism and drug trafficking, as we've seen with the recent boat strikes over the last couple of months. Now, this is under the U.S. President, Donald Trump, who I did not vote for. But he is still my president. I still live in the U.S. My taxpayers, my tax money goes to the things that are happening abroad. This is the administration that just pardoned another president for the Honduran president, Orlando Hernandez. and he was convicted by a federal jury in 2024 for 45 years.
He was actually a narco, like he was
An
actually a narco.
actual
Like he was
400
actually presiding
tons.
over a
Yes,
corrupt
400. What is
narco
400
state.
tons? I think it's 400 tons of cocaine.
Just trafficking.
Yes,
Yeah.
important to the U.S. and they're accusing. Federal government is accusing Nicolás Maduro of endangering the lives of the U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm. So this capture, this kidnapping, this unauthorized removal of a sitting president from his country, duly elected president. It's not new. They've been trying to kick Maduro out and install Juan Guaido. You know, that happened a few years back. They've been doing everything to destabilize Maduro because obviously Maduro was the heir apparent of Hugo Chavez, who was the Bolivarian revolutionary leader who, and by Bolivarian revolution, we mean Venezuela is an oil-rich country. They have the world's largest oil reserves. Oil has technically always been nationalized, but until Hugo Chavez took over, there was corruption around how the profits or the revenues from the oil money was being spent. So Chavez said, yeah, so we're not going to convert the country fully to socialism. So that's number one thing that's debunked. Venezuela is not a true socialist republic. It still allows capitalism, but it's capitalism with controls. But the oil is nationalized. And since Chavez, they take the revenue from the oil money and invest it in robust public programming for the people. So people have healthcare, people have education, they eradicated illiteracy, they eradicated many preventable diseases, people have access to clean water. And then also Venezuela has a mighty leftist culture in the country where they organize autonomous communes, and the people fully support the sort of this Bolivarian arrangement. But what's important on the narco-terrorism point, the alleged narco-terrorism point, is the Cartel de los Soles or Cartel of the Sun organization that Maduro has been accused of being the head of. We knew that was a myth. The CIA, the state, they love a psyop. That's a myth, and it has been debunked. Like even according to the New York war crimes, the New York Times, the Justice Department 2 days ago dropped the claim that Venezuela's Cartel de los Soles is an actual group. So we're holding this man. We're holding him for what?
For what? I also want to point out that when you said that Venezuela, the left is not our leftists, like, because people need to understand that we're not talking about Bernie Sanders.
No.
We're talking about way more progressive, free healthcare. Oh my God, shocking! Like, take care of the people. Use the profits from this to take care of the people. So yes, it is about oil. I need people to understand it is definitely about oil, but it's also about power and maintaining power, and also making an example of an oil-rich country that, oh, bitch, we're going to do what we want to do. Like, we're going to do what the fuck we want to do. And who's going to stop us?
Yeah.
Who's going to stop us? Because you've seen the conversation. Oh, well, this is unconstitutional. These are the things. What's going to happen? Like, is the UN going to sanction the United States? Well, no.
Well, of course not.
Well, no.
Because the United States has already sanctioned Venezuela, as they've sanctioned Cuba, as they sanctioned Iran, as they've sanctioned Russia. That is the antagonism here that we really need to unpack in this conversation. Go ahead, Deshaun.
Yeah, I want to start where I always start, which is this. Not only is this not an isolated incident, not only is this not an isolated experience, it is in fact the playbook of the U.S. empire.
Yes,
it is in fact the playbook that is required of every president, every sitting president, and their administration to do. That's what imperialism looks like. And so there are two questions that I always lead with in this particular conversation. The first question is, if George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump all agree on particular tactics, if it was related to domestic policy, many people, many quote unquote progressives and liberals would be like, pause. Why do these four people who we think of, and when I say we, I'm being clear, I'm talking about the progressives, the neoliberals, who we think of as very different people, why do they all agree on this policy?
Well,
but those four people have all had antagonistic relationships with Venezuela. And so I want people to ask themselves, why is it that these four people are aligned in some way with regards to antagonizing Venezuela? And then I want people to ask the second question, and that is, if Maduro is the dictator that Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton have all named him to be, and he is doing the exact same things as he's allegedly doing the exact same things as what we know Netanyahu is doing.
Well, yeah.
Then why has the U.S. not kidnapped Netanyahu?
well, you didn't say Biden.
Well, like,
Oh, and Biden, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. Joe
Biden.
Biden.
Harris.
I want people to ask these questions because these are the questions that you should ask to start really thinking like, oh, something else is happening here. Something else antagonistic is happening in this moment that requires a deepened analysis of how building and sustaining empire works through imperialism and through the overall state apparatus. And when I say state apparatus, when we say state apparatus, we're not just talking about, the police. We're not just talking about the military. The state apparatus is the many different branches that help to maintain state power. That includes media and propaganda. That includes government officials. That includes military operations. That includes all of these various different things that help to make sure that the state continues to exist in the way that it does. And what I think people should be clear about is the fact that the U.S. has always, since its inception, created a problem that they then tell the people that they have to solve. They create a problem and they make people believe that it is a problem that has been created by the individual country that they're antagonizing or that they're going after. And then they have to come in as the savior to save or to fix that problem that they created. And we know this to be true because if we go back and look at history, if we go back and do some extensive research, we're able to find various coups or regime changes attempts that the U.S. has financially supported. And so that takes me to another point that I'm always talking about in these conversations, which is the National Endowment for Democracy. T has talked about this a little bit earlier in this conversation, but there were active anti-Chavez groups for quite some time who were trying to overthrow Chavez's presidency.
Yes.
Research showed that there was a number of public funding from the U.S. that was channeled to those anti-Chavez groups that was not accounted for in the U.S. Budget. So if there are entire pockets of like finances that are just not accounted for from the U.S. and it's shown that that money is going to anti-Chavez or anti-insert quote unquote dictator here groups, then where's that money going to, or where is it coming from? And the answer is the National Endowment for Democracy. So for folks who don't know, the National Endowment for Democracy is a quote unquote private institution that was created during the Cold War. And they period. Come on, history. And their entire purpose, according to the organization, is to help strengthen democracy throughout the world. So the United States will always and has always used words like democracy and human rights to impose themselves on other countries as a way to implement regime change and as a way to spread empire. I need people to know that, to be clear about that. And so the National Endowment for Democracy has been accused. Of course, George Bush has denied this, and so have following presidents, but has been accused of using the funds that, to be clear, NED, or the National Endowment for Democracy, most of their funding comes from Congress. Again, this is a private institution, and most of their funding comes from the U.S. Congress. Okay? It has been, research has shown that they have given a heap of money to various countries around the globe to implement regime change within those countries with the purpose of spreading U.S. imperialism, but through naming that they're spreading democracy throughout the world. We've seen this in the ways that the U.S. has extracted resources from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from Libya, right? We've seen this in the ways that the U.S. has supported the genocides happening in Palestine, in the Congo, in Sudan, and in Venezuela, and in Cuba, right? The continued sanctions that happen against Cuba, that happen against Venezuela, those are not isolated incidents. Those are not things that just happen out of nowhere, that are not antagonistic things, or that are happening because one president, the one that we call the worst of its kind, Trump, is really upset about something that's happening in Venezuela. No, this is a long history between the U.S. and various countries throughout South America, throughout the global South, where America is trying to extract these countries' resources for their own gain, to remove these countries from a global market so that the U.S. benefits 100-fold from the resources that these countries own. And that was the entire purpose of why the U.S. has had these these antagonistic relationships with Venezuela, because Chavez said, hey, we know that the U.S. is making way more money off of our oil, the largest oil refinery in the world, off of our oil, and we're not making no money off of this. So actually, we don't want no more U.S. diplomats in our country. We don't want any more U.S. relations at all until we're going to be able to get some money off of this. And you know who said, well, if you're not going to have any U.S. diplomats in the country, then we're going to threaten war. You know who said that? It wasn't Trump.
Who said that?
It was Hillary Clinton.
Wow.
As Secretary of State.
Under Obama, right?
Under
She was
Obama.
Obama's Secretary of State.
She was Obama's
so this
Secretary
is Clinton's
of State.
wife, who's Obama's Secretary of State. So we're keeping it in the dim house, just to be clear.
Just to be clear, it was Hillary Clinton under Obama who threatened war if Venezuela did not accept U.S. diplomats back into their country. Mm-hmm. And I just all these things are so interconnected, and I think that, people feel like because this is happening under Trump, that it is an isolated incident, or that it is something that only Trump is responsible for, and that this is just so unprecedented and we've never seen the U.S. do something like this before. No, this is part of a very long history between the U.S. and Venezuela, where they have long antagonized Maduro specifically and Venezuela more largely because of the ways that the U.S. has wanted to take over this country and take over their resources, and the ways that this country has fought back against that very dynamic. And it was because of Chavez's desire to link up with, to sort of get close to Russia and China, and Iran, that the U.S. was like, no, we're not fucking with that. Because we might not be able to go to war with them, but we can go to war with y'all. And so they've been antagonizing them ever since. I mean, long before then, but especially ever since then. And so once again, if Obama, Biden, Harris, Trump, Clinton, and Bush all agree on anything, it's that the U.S. must, by any means necessary, expand its empire and sustain its power in the global market.
I thought I
it's
thought democracy was a good thing.
so it's not
I
actually.
thought so too.
When you say
Terms and conditions
democracy,
may apply.
Not U.S. democracy.
when you say U.S. democracy, you mean the spread of U.S. global hegemony, which is
Correct.
the devil, which is empire, which is imperial control. And so, yeah, like the long history of all of the things that have happened, in Latin America in particular. I mean, obviously it's a part of the Monroe Doctrine, like the legacy of the Monroe Doctrine. That's sort of where we start. I always drop resources on here. I encourage people to, there's a podcast series called Under the Shadow that is done by, let's see, which newsroom does Under the Shadow? It's a left media newsroom.
That's the one you sent the link to?
Maybe, I don't know. I sent a lot of links, but
You did.
Yeah, but every episode of Under the Shadow is a different overthrow, like U.S. backed overthrow. So it covers Honduras, covers Bukele, El Salvador, Guatemala. It covers Nicaragua, which is obviously very important. Costa Rica, the Panama Canal, and the U.S. invasion of Panama. So, I mean, you pick a place and they all sort of have this shared history because the United States wanted to quell the leftist turn that happened in the 50s and 60s, as we were trying to convert the entire world during the Cold War, or in the middle of the Cold War, toward a sort of neoliberal, what we call the Western consensus. So the Western consensus is that markets should be, it's the classical neoliberal ideology that markets should be as free from anti-capitalist controls as possible. So that means the presence of any type of leftist oriented, i.e. like Chavez with the oil, right? You have this robust resource. This Western consensus, this neoliberal ideology says that under free markets, anybody in the world should be able to pull up and get in on this natural resource. Presidents like Chavez and Maduro are like, well, no. And actually, Exxon is present in Venezuela. Like, they've built infrastructure there, but they've been put out. They've been right. They are not, and they're the only ones. But U.S. oil companies, U.S. capitalist oil companies do have presence in Venezuela. However, they don't abide by the Venezuelan ethos that predominantly most of the revenue from that goes toward our people. It stays with us. You're not just going to roll up in here and pull, what they've done in Iraq, right? Or what they've done in Afghanistan, right? Or they're not going to build the same type of, here's the oil like we see in the UAE and places like that, where they sort of, instead of fighting the US, they give us very, very favorable trade conditions in places like Kuwait and Qatar. And obviously this is still done with a long history of United States military might, like the threat of a US action against these countries. So it's not just cut and dry, but we have more favorable relations with these countries than what happens in Latin America. So I think that's really important to name. But then Also, you have to look at the United States is not the world's number one superpower anymore. The rise of China, the rise of Russia, the rise of multipolarity, right? But especially the rise of China, pushed the United States towards starting to try to fight this on multiple fronts, right? So under President Obama, Obama's sort of pivot to Asia was his foreign policy, where he was trying to go into East Asia and make sort of favorable alignments with places in China's backyard. So we're talking about, over in the Pacific, places like Singapore. Obviously, we already unjustly like own Guam and Hawaii, from like the World War II era. But we were responsible for the contested elections in Myanmar under Obama. We increased military ties with the capitalists, Vietnam, Australia, and the Philippines. We threw a bunch of like aid to Laos in order to sort of coalesce these partners outside of the Middle East, outside of China, around the US's favor, so that we could go head up with China, because China has enough power to exercise what we call hard and soft power in elsewhere in the world, meaning these countries that the United States and the West have systemically underdeveloped and expropriated under globalization by giving them IMF and World Bank loans that they can't pay back, that force them to give up their social programs in favor of more free markets, that have put plenty of countries, because of the austerity measures required by IMF, World Bank, and U.S. loans, into poverty, that have completely destabilized nations. We'll often disorient people with that, and then we'll throw on top of it, we will fund the oppositions in these countries to then overthrow leaders. And so with Maduro, there's a whole lot of sentiment, right? There's a whole lot of back and forth. Do the people of Venezuela support Maduro? The people over there don't even like him anyway, so this is okay, we're relieving them. That is, again, textbook US imperialism. Nobody in a country 100% loves their leaders. That's why countries have like plurality. In this country, we don't all fuck with Trump. We didn't all fuck with Biden. We didn't all fuck with Obama. Like, you name one. There's never been a president of the United States. There's never been a governor of a state. There's never been a mayor of a city. There's never been a head of a neighborhood association, like where everybody loves the leader. Like, no, that's why you have elections, and what we dream democracy to be is as such. These are not countries that just suspend elections and have one all-powerful leader. Like, Chavez was elected multiple times. Maduro has been elected. So I think that's important to pull up, because now that the United States is like, okay, we're fighting, a war of global politics on the Eastern Front. Let's turn our attentions back over here to our backyard to maintain hegemony and say, these countries are going around us and fucking with Russia and China anyways. So under the sanctions, and there's an episode of Gorilla podcast that's called Sanctions as Siege Warfare. They did an entire series in 2022 about sanctions that I encourage everybody to listen to. They're great. A country is placed like under siege. You know how like in Gaza, like we say, Israeli occupation is effectively siege of the Palestinian people in the West Bank but especially in Gaza. Long before October 7th, this is the status quo. Israel controls what comes in, what goes out, who moves, who gets passports, who work there, who can deliver aid, like whatever. They control everything. Sanctions is a similar relationship where whether it's the UN or some other, international institution or countries themselves that impose sanctions on nations, sanctions are supposed to be used to crush standing regimes and to bring a country to heel. Sanctions have been endorsed by the left and by, anti-colonial folks in times like South African apartheid, right? There was a massive call for us to sanction South Africa until the apartheid regime, fell. There has been calls to sanction Israel. Hello, genocide, right? So whether you agree with them or not, these are the tools that, the ways that sanctions are used. This means that Venezuela being a country under sanctions they can't freely export the oil the way that they need to, nor do they have access to the US dollar. Oil is traded in dollars, period. So countries like Russia, countries like Iran, countries like Cuba, countries like Venezuela can't freely reap the benefits of oil and other commodities because they can't they can't access dollars. So they have to do things like partner with non-same countries to, you know, quietly, and they call this smuggling, right? Put the oil resources, put the commodities on a different sort of shipping apparatus or whatever to move it around the world, to trade that with somebody else to then get dollars. So say with Cuba, they trade oil for doctors. Cuban doctors then run these sort of robust social programs for Venezuelan people. I think these are really important things to like be clear on, because the picture is the United States is wagging their fingers at Venezuela for doing things like selling their oil to China, right? Because their number one export partner for Venezuelan oil is China. And the United States wants that to be us, which is why Trump is saying things like, we're going to run the country. We're going to require them to export, you know, X amount of millions of barrels of oil. And obviously that works in favor, because it's like, if you don't care about this for any other reason, it's the U.S. Gulf South. Living here in Houston, there's a piece written by Adam Mahoney of Capital B News that is brilliant. That says Venezuelan oil brought to the U.S. would be refined in Black Gulf communities. So down here where we live in Louisiana and Houston in the Gulf, this is the sort of oil crescent. There are some of the world's largest refineries exist down here. And many of those refineries are equipped to process the thicker, more tar-heavy, heavily polluting oil type of oil, crude oil that comes from Venezuela. They don't process the oil that is piped from the United States and from Canada. And so the immediate impact of this for the people of the United States is down here in Cancer Alley, where like the oil is purple on a bad day, or not oil, the air is purple on a bad day and red on a good one. We can't breathe down here as it is. They're expanding infrastructure to refine more oil and going to another country, stealing the oil for this enterprise in a time of climate collapse and, you know, mass public health crises. So yeah, that's a long spill, but it's like, it's a really, really, really intricate situation that we're dealing with that impacts not just the people over there, not just members of the military, but like us right here in the United States.
Yes. I forgot that my mic was muted.
They tell me I speak.
Good night, Big Juan. But that, like, all of that is really, really, really important. Not only is it important context, but to Justin's point earlier, it's like, come on, historian, like that history really matters to help shape how we talk about all of this. And for those of us who have been here, who have been witnessing all of this for however long, we know that this is not, again, to the earlier point, we know that this is not unprecedented. We've seen this with Libya and Gaddafi. We've seen this with Haiti or Haiti, right? Like, and I think Haiti in particular is a very, very, very important like country to talk about, because Haiti, like all of the others, but Haiti in particular, has never recovered. Has never recovered from the role that the U.S. played in destabilizing their people and in destroying their ability to ever play an active role in the global economy. Like, and I think like that is just it's so important to name. Same with Cuba, right?
With Haiti in particular, like as you named, they took the democratically elected president, John Bertrand Aristide, and like they did the same thing. Like, went down there on a plane, abducted the president, and installed a puppet. And this was oversaw by Hillary Clinton. If you look up
Man,
Dr.
I would want to be in her shoes after this.
Dr. Jemima Pierre, Jemima Pierre, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. But yes, this is like her bread and butter. She's a scholar of Haiti and the Black Global South, more generally the continent and the Caribbean. But if you type her in on the YouTube or in the Google box, she's on the editorial team over at Black Agenda Report, so she writes a lot for them. But she's published widely. She's an academic. She's a professor. So she's published both in academic journals and then also like in the gym pop streets. But she has a lot of great YouTube videos where if you just type in Dr. Jemima Pierre or Jemima Pierre in Haiti, a wealth of resources. But yeah, that was the exact same thing, Deshaun. They went over there, they took the president, they installed a puppet, and you're right, they've never recovered, and the resources have been for the taking.
Yes. And so it's like, it's so important to know history, to study history, to be able to see exactly how the U.S. continues to use over and over and over again the very same playbook. And I think, like, you know, liberals always scream, but her emails whenever Trump does something, but like Hillary Clinton's emails are actually very important to talk about, because it was in those emails that we saw that she had a long established relationship with anti-Venezuelan and anti-Cuban regimes or leaders, democratic elected leaders, right? And it was in those emails that it was shown that a significant amount of money was being allocated to anti-regime, anti-Cuban and Venezuela regimes that just so happened to coincide with her tenure as Secretary of State, right? Like, so I get so annoyed with liberals who go, you know, but her emails, because it's like, well, yeah, the emails were actually very significant and they played a significant role in showing exactly how the Democrats use the exact same playbook as the Republicans to expand the American market, to expand the American regime, the American empire. And again, we've seen this over and over and over again. Like, we just named all these countries, all these spaces: Libya, Haiti, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, like Libya, Sudan, the Congo, Palestine. Like, we cannot continue to witness and allow for the U.S. to overtake and destroy the lives of so many people, all in the name of quote unquote resources and property.
Capital.
Capital. What I was about to say was, but really in the name of capital and building upon the U.S. empire, because America is grappling. It's trying its best to hold on to its place in the global market, to hold on to its place in the global economy, to hold on to its place in maintaining its power as the sort of like top U.S. or not U.S. top imperial power. And we have to, in order for us to really be clear about this, or in order for us to really sort of fight back against this, we have to be clear about the role that the U.S. has played in the destabilization of all of these countries, and the ways that they have never recovered and likely will not recover from the role that the U.S. has played in the destabilization of these countries. And so for me, it's like, you know, how much are we willing to concede to? How much are we willing to witness and allow to continue to happen, both domestically and abroad, before we have a collective response to the U.S.'s overreach? And that collective response cannot be it cannot be determined by sitting Congress members who want to antagonize other Congress members and say, you know, well, this is illegal this is unconstitutional, because that has never mattered to the U.S. government. Everything about the U.S. existing is illegal, right? Like it doesn't matter. Nothing about what the U.S. does has ever been determined by legality. It's been determined by propaganda. It's been determined by what it can and cannot convince people is okay. And Jasmine Crockett and AOC and all these
And
other
Zoran.
all these other progressive Democrats are not going to be able to overthrow that very thing by just saying it's undemocratic. It's not what we want for democracy. It is not. It is illegal. It's unconstitutional. It doesn't matter, because what they're really saying is, we don't care that you went in and did this to this country. We just want you to get approval from Congress first.
Exactly.
Because they don't give a fuck.
This is a
Isn't that what
midterm
Chuck?
year.
Yeah, especially when you got Chuck Schumer, who we shouldn't have done. What's the plan? What are we doing? I mean, you got in there, so what are we going to do? And then you turn around 10 minutes later, you're hooked up with Marco Rubio.
And what they did was implement an interim leader and have issued demands for this country, for them to be able to use their own resources.
Yes.
Like, if you don't give us the oil or else, it's what's happening. And like, Venezuela is in this moment just the tip, right? They're like, oh, well, this worked. So Cuba, Mexico,
let's keep going.
Let's just keep
bombing Nigeria.
Yeah, exactly. They bombed them, and then a couple weeks later they bombed Venezuela. Venezuela has had a blockade in Caribbean waters surrounding it since September. We have watched them murder 100 people on boats that they allege are carrying sanctioned oil. There's no such thing as sanctioned oil. You cannot sanction the resources of a sanctioned
Like, what
country.
the fuck are we talking about?
You can only sanction the entities that move them, right? So you can sanction the shipping company. You can, if they go around the U.S. sanctions and put, Venezuelan oil on Chinese or Russian boats, you can sanction that. That's a violation. But the oil itself, the resource itself, is not subject to sanctions. Like, and they do all this not only because they know at best what we're going to do is try to vote, or at best what we're going to do is paint a sign and go stand outside of an embassy and say we dissent. Like this morning in Minneapolis, they're outside of federal buildings like, we're pissed off about ICE. They killed your girl. Like, what are we doing? Snowballs are not enough. And this situation continues to be, I say this every episode, I say this every time I speak, we live in a world that is like this because we continue to take reforms and concessions instead of revolution. Revolution has long been what's required. It was required in the 60s. It's been required in the 30s. It's been required since there was an America. The American Revolution still prevails. When I'm talking seriously about Palestine, yes, the occupying entity, Israel, is willing to do whatever, and they don't give a fuck about an international law. International law is white law. Shout out to Walter Rodney. Like, they do what they want because they are, to them, they're defending a revolution. The Venezuelan people are defending a Bolivarian revolution. Before he left, Maduro made arms readily available to people who are organized to use them. So we kicked the dough in that country. Those people are literally ready to take up arms and deploy a nationwide guerrilla offensive to protect their nation. ICE kill our neighbors and take our people. Our government.
We call him the governor.
Our government garnishing our wages for student loans and cutting off fucking SNAP benefits, and we calling a fascist, telling them that they're doing fascism. Like,
isn't that what Zoran did? He made a FaceTime call to
Zoran said, I called him and I voiced my dissent. And
I just want y'all to know I did call.
I called.
We had a conversation. I was very stern with him.
Trump knows I'm upset.
You bet not.
Because you brought him to New York. Like, Maduro is in a New York jail with, like, where Diddy was at. Where fucking Ghislaine Maxwell was at. Like, this is just, I saw it to a meme. It was like, they are Arkham Asylum. Like, all of these terrible people are in the same jail. But like, it's really absurd that we're going to continue to just lay down and take it. And that's why they keep doing it. That's why they keep doing it. Because
we did vote. We did vote back in 2024 for VP Harris. So if Harris was in charge right now, we would be at brunch. We wouldn't be worried about any of these things.
If Harris was in charge, they would do the exact same thing with a better organized psyop.
Yeah,
she would have, like, the whole he's the head of a drug cartel and all of that. That story would have been foolproof. It would have been carried out. She would have asked Congress. She would have manufactured consent, because that's how the Democrats do
let's talk
the
about
advancing of imperial hegemony, right?
Let's get into that.
They use decorum.
Yes,
they go through the proper channels. You know,
I don't think people understand that enough. That is what's happening. Trump doesn't give a fuck. He's going to tell, we're running Venezuela. Like, it's our shit. We're doing it.
You're next.
Like, you're next. In Greenland, girl, it depends if we get BOGO deals. I mean, we can. And I need folks to understand when we say that these are two sides of the same coin. The Democrats have a better plan with it that looks good for us. For those who may not understand how some of these things work. Oh, he's a dictator. Oh, he's authoritarian. He's all of these things. He's evil. He's used chemical weapons against his own people. So it's okay to use chemical weapons against other people. So it only matters when you're using it against your own people. Like, these things that we, like propaganda, as we were talking about earlier, to make us manufacture consent for us, the American people, to be okay, because these people represent us, whether we like it or not. And their agenda causes problems in other countries. As we were talking about earlier, with Hillary Clinton in the emails conversation, how, it was just her emails. But in these, like Deshaun pointed out, these emails showed the plans and things that Hillary Clinton was initiating. She was a part of. So I get sometimes we want to laugh at some of these things because we saw the conversation about homeboy being in the Nike Tech.
Some of it is ridiculous. Some of it is actually funny. Ridiculous.
And the Nike Tech sales have went up. If we don't do shit else, we're going to consume. Girl, I vote and I go buy. And I stop buying from certain trash company to the next. I might not be shopping at Target, but I'm damn sure going to shop at Walmart where they
support some other Zionists.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Right. And it's weird.
I might not drink no Starbucks, but you bitches cannot ask for more than $20 an hour.
What's weird is, like, we can't even mobilize. And again, when I'm in the middle, when I'm speaking, I'm talking to us, I'm talking to the blacks, I'm speaking to niggas. Like, we can't ever get black folks to rally around BDS or get us to concertedly rally around. Like, I bring this up all the time. We talk about Cop City. I'm like, all we have to do to stop the Atlanta Police Foundation is quite literally stop engaging the corporations that fund it. If Cop City did nothing else, it showed everybody who lives in Atlanta and around the world who was interested who funds all of the shit that displaces and polices and surveils everybody in Atlanta. Like, the Atlanta Police Foundation is funded by Home Depot and Waffle House and Chick-fil-A and Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines and a whole bunch of other corporations. But y'all not going to stop drinking Coke. Y'all not going to stop taking Delta flights. You're not going to stop eating Waffle House. So it was a moot point from the beginning that the only way that Cop City wasn't going to be built is if we, you lay siege to the city, you general strike, you take robust action. But people are like, we should be nonviolent, spirit of Dr. King. Girl, y'all couldn't hold down a Montgomery bus boycott right now.
Mm-mm.
Those black folks, those poor black folks living under Jim Crow in Montgomery, Alabama in the 1950s, held down over a year's long of sustained organizing around we will not ride the bus until they desegregate the bus. And we can't get y'all to stop shopping at Target unless Tabitha Brown, oh my God, they roll back DEI and we're not going to have any more
We're not
Black
gonna say.
executives, or they're not going to sell Black people $14 soap at Target. So we got to stop shopping there. And it's absurd.
Black
It
ex-
really is.
I mean, the girls were mad at Delta when Delta said, okay, too many of you niggas is in Delta One. Y'all, too many of y'all's in the Sky Lounge. Y'all,
Oh, yes.
y'all girls is doing too much. You need more
gonna roll
points
all
and you
this
need more
back.
thing. Yeah, we gonna roll this shit back. Them girls said, you all want to be a part of something that you will never.
You would never.
You really want to be a white girl.
You really
You
want to be a
really
white
wanna be
girl.
a white girl. You really want to be a
Is
white
that
girl.
something that you want? Well, let me tell you, you'll
Was that-
never get
Never
it.
get it.
Well, Deshaun, with them being a white girl, does that mean that they want to hold the whip?
Well, yes. The reality is that the people really want to. People imagine freedom as the ability to be the whip holder, the one
To be
who
the
wields
massa.
the whip, to be the massa. And we don't want to call it that, right? We don't want to say that, but our actions, the things that we strive for, are all about taking or having access to what massa has access to. An excessive amount of money, an excessive amount of access, the ability to ignore what's happening in the world, right? We don't want to actually be free. We just want to be able to hold and wield the whip. That is the reality of it. But I want to go back really quickly to Biden, Joe Biden.
We did it, Joe.
I want to go back to Biden real quick because this feels very important to me to name that the Democrats are exceptional propagandists.
Yes.
They are really, really, really good at being propagandists. And so when Trump does something that is as explicit as what he's doing now, we think in the public psyche, the public imagination, it's like, oh my gosh, Biden or Harris or Obama or Clinton would never do anything like this. But what they would do is, so back in 2020, the U.S. Justice Department indicted Maduro on drug and weapons trafficking charges.
Mhm.
And the Biden administration kept that in place, right? That was back in 2020. We know that Bush, some of the earliest sanctions that we saw on Venezuela in the Bush administration was about weapons charges. It no longer it didn't allow for them to trade weapons in Venezuela anymore, right? So the Biden administration doing this in 2020 or upholding these sort of like this indictment in 2020 and then issuing an increased reward for information that would lead to Maduro's arrest, that's propaganda. And I want people to be able to hold that, right? Like, they indicted this man on drug trafficking charges, accusing him of trafficking a significant amount of drugs in the U.S. And I want to acknowledge that Venezuela is not even in the top 10 list of the Trump administration identified countries. So this is taking into account that this is what Trump is saying, that this is what the U.S. is saying, are the countries that are trafficking the most drugs into the U.S. Venezuela doesn't even sit on the top 10 of that list. But somehow Maduro is worth $15 to $25 million for anyone who can give information that would lead to his arrest. So that's number one. But then the second point that for me feels important is in March 2021, the Biden administration granted temporary protected status to hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans who were fleeing the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. That is important to name because the U.S., whether it's Democrats or Republicans, have always been very, very clear they're going to defend their borders.
Mhm.
They will maintain their borders. They may not call for the building of a wall, but they are going to build that wall.
They do it in different
They
language.
do
So
it
I mean, if
exactly.
y'all go back and watch the episode, what was it, in the middle of feminism that we did, like our first episode back, where we talk about the Kamala Harris book tour, and I read the part of the book, I listened to the audiobook, listened to it on the iPod. Kamala spends an extensive amount of time trying to defend herself and like make the case for why she should have been president and why they should have handed her the baton in the beginning. And she's throwing Joe under the bus, and she's talking about how all the things that she did while she was vice president was like really like they turned the lights off on her so that they could boost Joe Biden's shine. That is the thesis of this book. But she speaks specifically about how it was her job as vice president to deal with the border. And she speaks in very neoliberal terms about the things that she did in Central America and Mexico to sort of curb the amount of migrants coming over. Because let's be clear, like we started this conversation talking about ICE. Venezuela is also the manufacturing of consent for anything we do down there is not just about oil, it's the migration too. Marco Rubio and them can't stop saying Venezuela is responsible for over 8 million, illegal immigrants in the United States. Yeah, because they're under sanctions. When you sanction a country and the people can't get food, medicine, and resources, guess what? They leave, right? So there's a direct connection between increased migration and sanctions. See also what happens in the Mediterranean. Like, what's the job of Libya since we've overturned their entire government? Yeah, Libya is basically an entire immigrant, like it's an ICE camp. It's an immigrant detention center for the EU. When they capture people who don't die in the Mediterranean trying to get into the European Union countries, because they're coming from sanctioned countries in parts of Asia and North Africa, right? Or just Africa in general, they're captured and sent to Libya in the same way that we're deporting people to El Salvador. So our inaction is also creating new markets for carcerality and policing, all under the guise of we're fortifying our borders. And, the Democrats are just as complicit in these things as the Republicans are. And globally, liberals and the left, right? Because Keir Starmer runs, England. And it's a lot of like liberal and left presidents and heads of state that have run very similar regimes in other countries, especially Western European countries that have done the same thing. So like, it's never
so that was the
them
point of
versus
me
them.
bringing this up, is that
Yeah.
the Democrats are excellent propagandists, because what happens is, again, going back to my earlier point, they manufacture the problem and then present themselves as a solution.
Mhm.
Biden and his administration allowed several 100,000 Venezuelan immigrants into the country for safe haven. But the thing is, they're no longer immigrants once they're fleeing humanitarian crisis, the refugees.
Yeah, they're refugees.
Right.
Yeah.
We're taking in people who are experiencing these horrible experiences under this dictatorship that only we can save them from. But to T's point, the issue that they're experiencing is they can't feed themselves, don't have any access to healthcare, and don't have any access to a home because of the jobs because of the sanctions that the U.S. has imposed on that country. And so when T is saying manufacturers consent, that is what it looks like from the Democrat side. It is them imposing sanctions on a country and then saying, oh, but we'll do this sort of diplomatic response by allowing those countries' people into our country because they're refugees, they're fleeing this violent experience. And that only means that if we're going to save them, we have to then go in with our military. We have to go in with our CIA spies. We have to go in with our particular resources to make sure that those people are allowed to live, because we want them to live, right? We don't want any more refugees from this place because we care about them. We're the Democrats. We want them to be well. You know, we really, really, really want to make sure that the people of Venezuela are taken care of. So we're going to go in with our military, and we're going to go in with our money, and we're going to make sure, we're just going to make sure that they're taken care of, that they are held, right?
Your
And that's
hand
what it
over your
looks like.
chest is taking me.
That's how they, you know, that's how they be. They're like, we
Reminds
just
me of
really
that gift from
care.
Paris when she was looking and the wind blew and she turned around.
They're just like, we just really care. We really want to
like,
make sure
I
that they're
care
cared
about the
for.
people
Like,
of Gaza, but I
Yeah.
believe Israel
but
has the right
I
to
believe that
exist,
Israel has the right to exist, and they
I will
have
do
the right to
whatever I
defend
can to defend themselves, and I will arm
Exactly.
them. I'll keep signing off on the bombs. Like
And so it's just like it's
Yeah.
so important to be clear about how propaganda works and how the Democrats use propaganda to indoctrinate people into believing that their actions in these other countries is justified, because what they're not naming is that their sanctions is what's leading to people fleeing their country. And
Yeah.
so they under Harris, Justin is right. The point that I was going with is back to Justin's point, is that you're right. People would be at brunch. They would be not focused at all on what's happening, because Harris would have done what T is naming manufactured consent to make sure that it was justifiable violence, without naming or being clear about the fact that we have been casing out the joint long before we ever had refugees in this country. Whereas Trump is naming, hell yeah, I had CIA agents out there. I did. I definitely did that.
And I did it.
He was like,
Did
yeah,
you
I
say
did
that?
that.
Yeah, I said it because that's what I meant.
And
That's what I did.
is at work, like, bruh, you weren't supposed to say, but like, there is no, you're not supposed to say that. And you know, like, fuck
We
Trump,
own
you know?
Venezuela. Well,
But like,
well, not really, but we
I
can't
like
say
that
that.
I like that he says it with his chest, because you can't say you don't know. Because we love to be, those of us who are media literate or actually literate, we love to say we don't know, or they know best, or, well, you know, we were bamboozled. Like, no, girl, like, you sat there and you bullied everybody into voting for this lady because she looked like you, she went to your school, and she, you know, y'all in the same organization. And that's what political gains are for you. You've been so deeply propagandized. Right, you know, and
not the illustrious
it's
Howard University.
It's just, you know, it's ridiculous. And I just think, like, I will never not be an anti-imperialist, obviously, but like, if nothing, what radicalized me more than anything was living in Atlanta. Like, I'm from the Black Mecca, and I see the way that it, you know, Andrew Young put homeless people on buses and said peace for the Olympics, right? Like, when it's in terms of global capital, they don't give a shit about your black ass. Blackness just becomes fungible currency, right? So in order for us to win World Cups and Olympic Games and Super Bowls, yeah, we are to home of trap music, but trap niggas get locked up and surveilled under cop cities. Like, it's a both and, because you can't have it both ways. Like, you know, they're like, income inequality gaps in Atlanta have always been, if not one, then two or three in the nation. That just is what it is. The gap between rich and poor, and you're rich because you're white in Atlanta. Typically, there are wealthy Black folks, but again, that's a part of the propaganda machine. Yeah. And, you know, I met Deshaun as an organizer at Georgia State when they were at Morehouse, a predominantly Black school at Georgia State, and Morehouse is fucking Morehouse. Like, and we watch these Black, these Black institutions bury sexual assault cases. Let Joe Biden come speak at the graduation, despite the students protesting it. There's students who are like, we're anti-genocide, and this man left us for dead during COVID, but you're gonna let him come speak at our school.
He's like, a good man, Savannah. He's a good man. And he's just down and out.
They also let Obama and Hillary Clinton
Blacks to save his campaign again.
And they send the students to Israel. You know, they send Black students to Israel. So my point in saying that is, we can't be seduced by narratives that are intentionally seductive. There is a reason why press is being repressed, right? There's a reason why the New York Times facilitates war crimes and the doors stay open. And over here at Scalawag and our Movement Media Alliance organizations, we have to fight tooth and nail to keep our lights on. The publication that I referenced when I was talking about Adam Mahoney's piece, Capital B News, like that is Black centered, and they do great reporting, especially on the Black South. And they publish robust content, but that's indie media, and they have to stay open. I mean, the damn AJC in Atlanta stopped printing physical newspapers on the last day of the year, and fuck the AJC because they're the New York Times of the South. Like, we have to be fucking for real. We have to be serious. We can't just take what these rags are telling us and run with it, because it manufactures consent for bombs, for genocide, for sanctions, for all of the bad things that are happening right now. And this isn't just like, support indie media, like because I work at Scalawag. This is like, I'm deeply passionate about raising the political literacy and the general literacy of our people, especially in a time where schools are quite literally from K through 12 up to the university level are banning not just books, but they are censoring what is being taught in classrooms. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today without robust movements to supplement what I was taught in school. When I was studying economics and public policy and urban planning in the Andrew Young School of Public Policy, it is a state-aligned, empire-aligned curriculum. It is a curriculum that trains young Black folks from around the world how to be an imperialist, because Andrew Young's a great imperialist. And if I hadn't been a part of a radical movement that put me onto the radical press, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be able to speak to you guys in the terms that I'm able to do. I wouldn't have met Deshaun, these sorts of things. If we would have just been, the avatars that our institutions meant us to be, like, we'd be jumping up and down like goddamn what's the homie from Pose that was jumping up and down for Juneteenth at the White House, like Billy Porter and his pride dress. Like, what is wrong with y'all? Like, we continue to prove that this shit doesn't work. And I don't say things like, we couldn't hold up a Montgomery bus boycott if we tried, like, for fun. That's not for shits and giggles. Like, we've really lost the plot.
Truly.
We celebrate a robust, radical and revolutionary Black history and a canon, and we look at all these figures, and we say free the political prisoners. And I'm talking not just to the Negro liberals, I'm talking to the left too. We need to be out front on being serious. Like, it's not just enough to keep writing about it, to keep talking about it, to keep potting about it. This is here for educational purposes, and I stand 10 toes on what we do here in Scalawag, but this has to precipitate in action. And it's really concerning to me that we can't even get everybody to stop buying shit in times of techno-fascism when Amazon is funding the bombs, but we keep ordering the shit. Like, at some point, we're going to have to concede. And what's going to happen is when things like they start, garnishing our wages next week for student loans, that's when people will wake up. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not enough for censorship. It's not enough for genocide and bombs. Like, I don't know when we get serious, but like, the time is long overdue.
Yeah.
The time is long overdue. Oh my gosh. What a insightful episode. I think we have covered a lot in this hour and some change. Do we have any final thoughts? I think like we wrapped everything up, especially the conversation. I wanted to make sure that we talked about the Democratic Party, because that's the conversation I kept hearing, is that every time Trump does something, we go back to that. It was before Harris, it was Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Before, it was just y'all niggas was silent for y'all was fat while we starved.
You bitches got fat while we starved.
Like, niggas was quiet as hell during Obama, like, and I feel like we have to let that go. We need to kill the Negro liberal inside of us.
But it's a desire. Like Deshaun said, you want to hold a whip.
Yeah. What did that mean to Harriet Tubman?
It
meant a whip.
Oh my gosh. So T put out some great articles and pieces. We'll make sure to link those below. There was this this podcast that you did share. I think it's Adnan Hussein.
Oh, the Adnan Hussein.
Oh,
Yeah. So the guerrilla
good.
history show that I was talking about before, Adnan Hussein and Henry, I forget Henry's last name. Henry.
Yeah, it was
H.
definitely YouTube. I watched it was under that name, Adnan Hussein.
Yeah, so they do an end of the year pod with Guerrilla History, Revolutionary Left Radio, Red Menace, and the Adnan Hussein Show, and so it's on all of their feeds. But yeah, you can look it up. It's a Spotify podcast. It's also on YouTube. But I'll drop links in the comments. And also Scalawag will be back from holiday break starting on Monday. So I'm really working on like a explainer and then links because I want everybody to have ready access to it. Because not just Venezuela, but everything that we covered today just requires like rigorous study. Because this is step one of like the World War III that we joke about. Like it's happening. This is happening right now.
Yeah. Another book that I was checking out was Central America's Forgotten History, Evolution, Violence, and the Roots of Migration. This is written by Dr. Aviva Chomsky. I just got put on to her not too long ago and was listening to her speak on some things and the history of Venezuela, and listening to her talk about borders and being arbitrary, like, and sovereign nations. What does that mean? Like the way the United States used that. Oh, it's a sovereign nation. So
don't get started on sovereignty.
Yes.
Wow.
Don't get the Afro pessimist started on sovereignty, honey.
Well, so we want to thank you all so much for joining us on another episode of In the Middle in Venezuela, and always in the middle of violence, child.
Yeah.
So in the next episode, we'll catch you all. Until next time, bye. Girl, not the balloons. Release them.
The balloons, release them.
I don't know.